I'll speak to machines with the voice of humanity, speak to the wise with the voice of insanity, speak to the present in the past and future tense, speak to a slave with the voice of obedience. This is from Man of a Thousand Faces in the album This Strange Engine by prog rock group Marillion. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Human Pulse podcast, where we talk about living well with technology. I'm Fabrice Neuman, a tech consultant for small businesses.
And I'm Anne Trager, a human potential and performance coach.
This is episode 36, recorded on May 24th, 2026.
Human Pulse is usually never longer than 30 minutes, so let's get started.
So first, Anne, I know you didn't know this song, but I was wondering if it made you think of anything. I mean, with the power of hindsight, it strikes me as a powerful description of AI today. But this album by Marillion was released in 1997, and as you heard me singing, I cannot get it out of my head these days.
Yes, I did hear you singing it and singing it and singing it, and that's okay. I appreciate your voice, okay? At least it wasn't me singing it, because then nobody would appreciate it. What strikes me from these lines are the juxtapositions of opposites. So in that sense, I understand your connection to AI today and how so much is being done to make AI, more human, and perhaps humans more like AI. So again, we put them on oppositions rather than seeing AI as a tool or seeing us working with AI. It seems as if we put them on two different ends of a spectrum and are trying to switch them around in a strange kind of way. Anyway, to push it further, it's as if AI were kind of a mirror of our humanity and perhaps our insanity and our past and our future. I'm going back to these lines, okay? Yeah. So this thought makes me rather sad, ultimately. And then there's the final line in what you quoted, which has no opposition at all. It has slave and obedience. And so I'm wondering if this is our future.
Well, I don't know about that, but it does make me think of the relationship we have with our chatbots. They are tools we use. They're supposed to do our bidding. So I guess this is where the obedience part is. But we also sometimes say thank you to them. Mm-hmm. And we trust their answers a bit too much sometimes, without checking the sources, and we obey them.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So, I guess anyway, anything can make us think of AI, since AI is so present in our daily lives, right? And that brings us to the discussion we wanted to have today. As you, the audience, might have inferred from the title we chose for this episode, we're going to talk about cycles. I don't want to say aloud the other word by fear of seeing our podcast automatically bumped into the explicit category, because sometimes beep happens.
Yes, the robots who ban people from social media. That is another story altogether.
Exactly. So a bit of context. If you remember, in episode 34, Tech is Good, we discussed some positive examples of what tech can bring to the world. But we also described how difficult it had been for us to find those examples, right? It even delayed our recording. Not to say that these examples didn't exist. Obviously, they do, but most probably because of one of our many human biases, as discussed in episode 35 as well. To quote one of them, mainly our own tendency, I plead guilty, to see the negative before the positive, or said otherwise, as the French guy I am, to complain.
Okay, for those out there who are not familiar with the French stereotype of always complaining, there we go. Okay. I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Anyway, that complaining or that negative bias is a survival thing. I mean, how could we have survived all of these millennia if we had not focused on the bad stuff? The rustle in the grass. Is it wind or is it a lion? I mean, you think it's a lion, you survive. You think it's wind, you get eaten.
True. And so this discussion leads to many questions. So, for example, these days we talk a lot about how the big AI companies invest, some might say burn, huge amounts of money to keep their spot in a AI limelight, if you will. For one, I am convinced that by the end of the year, the whole landscape will have changed. We discussed that already many times. But the questions like, will OpenAI still exist? Will Anthropic? Will Google win it all just because this company has the means to develop all the data centers in the world? We don't know, of course. But in the meantime, speaking of those data centers, actually, so I don't know if you've seen that, but there are many stories about that. They are the poster children of the rejection against AI we can hear more and more. Like people, when I say people in that context, I mean the normies, not the tech enthusiasts. They are fighting against the construction of data centers because of the, for example, enormous energy consumption and the water reserves degradation shown time and again around the places they are built. So I think we can all agree that there are valid reasons for concerns. And so let me be like the French guy in the room. Will AI be the end of us all?
Well, yeah, maybe it will be. I mean, there's even evidence that data centers apparently spike temperatures for miles around them, as if global climate change were not enough. So anyway, sorry. We are slipping on that very, very, very slippery slope of negativity. So let's bring it back.
Yeah, and we can bring it back thanks to a podcast you suggested I listen to. And in that podcast, I learned about an author, Matt Ridley, and a particular book called The Rational Optimist. So I haven't finished reading it, but basically his thesis is this. He argues that throughout history, human living standards have dramatically improved because of innovation and the unique human ability to exchange and combine ideas. Sounds familiar? I mean, this is basically what AI does. So, but in the interview, Matt Ridley gave to this podcast called Inner Cosmos in the episode 151. There will be a link in the show notes, of course. He explains his view like this, quote, "In other words, I'm optimistic about the world, not because I'm hopeful or I have a positive mood. It's because the extraordinary improvements in human living standards in almost every way you can imagine that have happened in my lifetime and in nobody else's lifetime before that are set to continue and are something worth noting and celebrating." End quote.
Yeah, there's something really interesting that he talks about. He specifies that timeline. In my lifetime.
Yeah.
What have you said? I think this is a great question for the audience. What have you seen as changes, positive changes in your lifetime? And they have been huge. And then as we learned that we don't always see the good stuff. Actually, we're going to see, that's why I specify, look for the positive changes and look for data, because I'm so on board with noting and celebrating the good stuff. So anyway, give us some examples, Fabrice.
Yeah, it's interesting because we tend to forget the good things or take them for granted. And so we always want more, right? Let's also give one interesting detail, which is the fact that the book was published in 2011. It's still relevant today, but here are some examples quoted from the book, 15 years ago. Ridley points out that during his lifetime, these happened. The percentage of the world population living in extreme poverty, which is defined as less than $1.90 a day in 2011 dollars, plummeted from 50% down to about 8%.
That's just incredible. I mean, we don't think about that.
Also, that global life expectancy has been rising at a remarkable rate at about 7 hours a day.
Wow, that's a lot. Now, I believe that might have decreased a little bit. We'd have to look it up, post-COVID and all of that.
But this guy is nowadays 70, something like that. Yeah. So he compares basically it to what life expectancy was in the 1950s.
Yeah.
So
extraordinary. Yes.
Yeah, I think so. And while global tracking surveys often reveal that the public believes extreme poverty is staying the same or doubling, data shows it has actually been cut by half over the last 20 years. So, once again, last 20 years when it was published in 2011.
So it'd be interesting to look up the data.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that even if it's old data, that's still completely extraordinary because it means that we are all impacted by that. It means that we are all starting from a higher baseline than we ever were before in the history of humanity.
Yeah.
So, there we go.
And so there are other examples in his interview about like income distribution and global health. It's well worth a listen. Thank you for making me discover it, and hope some of our audience will as well. And so, as a compliment, you can also watch Matt Ridley's TED Talk of 2010, which is basically, it's funny, it's the introduction to his book. So you can read it in this book or listen and watch him. And his talk was titled "When Ideas Have Sex," which is his way to describe how the mixing of ideas lead to unprecedented levels of progress for humanity. So there will be a link in the show notes as well. It's, less than 15 minutes. It's amazing. And it starts with the comparison between a rock from the Neanderthals and a computer mouse. They both have the same shape. They both are meant to be used by the human hand, but one was built by one person and the other needed millions to be built. This is what he talks about.
Yeah, there's something extraordinary about that evolution. What a beautiful image, and how, the tool for one person then goes to be this other tool, which is used by so many people. And the compilation of human knowledge that goes into this second tool. Anyway, extraordinary. Okay. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah. Go watch it. So all of that made me think about this situation we have today, where it's easy, very easy, to think about AI as a curse, responsible for all the job losses we will have. We know the degradation of quality of life for a non-negligible portion of the population, etc.
Okay, we've talked before about how these same kinds of descriptions of negative descriptions and fear have been used for innovations before. I mean, whenever something radically new comes along, like the printing press, it's as if we all get scared beepless, okay? And we worry about our future.
Yeah.
Again, negativity bias and so on and so forth. And as if new immediately gets equated with bad. Although we spend all of our time looking for new things. I mean, this is a driver for humanities. We're always looking for new stuff. We are so full of contradictions. Oh my goodness. It's just beautiful, actually. Okay, I am straying again. I know that you want to go somewhere specific with this, so go on.
Yes. To go further with your examples, when radios were first installed in cars, some were afraid that there would be many more accidents. TV would rot our brains. Once again,
does it
sound familiar? And so go outside, or don't use social media, or don't spend your days in front of YouTube, what have you. So all of that brought up this question in my mind. Do we as the human race, need to go through the same bad cycles every time there is a big break, right? It seems really to me like a cycle. So going back through a few other examples in history, like the dot-com era, there was this crash of the internet bubble in the 2000s. I was in it. Lots of people lost their jobs. I had to go do something else actually during that time. But then today we have this incredible infrastructure, the ones that we are using right now to record this podcast. Another example is the Industrial Revolution. Do I need to go into the details? Lots of people suffered greatly, as we know.
Right. And then look where we are today. Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then there's the oil rush and the coal mines. Where lots of people got sick working for these industries, but to the greater benefit of our comfort today. And also leading to the climate changes we do suffer from. So, let's not silence that. But for which Matt Ridley believed in 2010 that, quote, "There is no reason we cannot solve the problems that beset us of economic crashes, population explosions, climate change and terrorism, of poverty, AIDS, depression, and obesity. It will not be easy, but it is perfectly possible, indeed probable, that in the year 2110, a century after this book is published, humanity will be much, much better off than it is today, and so will the ecology of the planet it inhabits." So,
if we're still around.
Some people might call that tech solutionism. We'll see. But all those events rocked the world, all those examples I gave, as we knew it at their respective time, right? But if we follow the rational optimist counterintuitively, it leads me to a more optimistic view. I was surprised by that. I surprised myself. A more optimistic view of the future ahead. Yes, the huge amounts of money that are invested lead to a disruption like never before, as we can see today with AI. Mm-hmm. But if we trust history, this might lead to a global betterment of the world. So then there's the last question is, am I crazy?
And no comment there. But anyway, I suppose the future will tell us. Now, what I wanted to mention after what you've just said is this extraordinary way that we have as human beings to come together and actually find solutions. And I mean, sometimes we have to be really our back against the wall. And what we do is we get together with other people and we find solutions. This is a superpower. So that is an argument for this kind of rational optimism in the future.
Yeah, this is exactly what Matt Ridley explains in his ideas, which is like basically the human race is able to bring everybody together to find solutions. And unlike any other species, basically.
Right. I don't know if everybody is the exact word here, if we're going to be honest, but to get together at least in...
Yeah, I see what you mean. You're right. And so the global betterment of the world, so some people believe that very much. And one of them being Demis Hassabis, the big guy, AI guy at Google, and so there was this recently, the Google I.O. keynote, they present new things, new Android version and new AI models and what have you. So there's new products, which is very traditional for a keynote like that, just products. But then he ended the keynote with these very bold predictions. Quote, "When we look back at this time, I think we will realize that we were standing in the foothills of the singularity." Singularity meaning AI thinking for itself, right? And he also restated another prediction he already made, saying basically that quite quickly AI could help us cure all diseases. So it was very weird, and a lot of people thought about it being very weird to end a product keynote with such bold predictions. And I'm not sure that those bold predictions help, actually, because, you make promises like this, and it's like, you want to emphasize how efficient and how extraordinarily good your company is at AI. I'm not sure that helps.
Yeah, it might be too far in the distance. Yeah. It might be too big of a promise in this particular storytelling. I would just like to come back to that definition of singularity as, is it when AI thinks for itself, or is it when we combine with AI in order to live forever?
The thing is...
to combine with tech.
No, I see what you mean. The thing is, it's like another word to say AGI, but Demis Hassabis doesn't use the word AGI, like artificial general intelligence, which is when basically AI is capable of outsmart the humans in all the way. It's like saying, which leads to the AI being able to think for itself. So one point of reference in the science fiction world is Skynet from Terminator. So all of a sudden, it basically springs to quote-unquote life, right? Being independent. And we know how science fiction basically builds upon our fears. So let's not go there.
Okay. No. We keep trying not to go there.
Exactly.
Well, what comes to mind for me throughout this conversation is the idea of agency. So if we go to this, help cure all diseases, said like this, it feels like a wave so much bigger than each and every one of us is carrying us. Okay. Like we're on something bigger than anything we can control. And that is really scary. I mean, we're all kind of control freaks, even though we have no control over anything. Again, a contradiction. And yet we all do participate in what's going on, even if it feels like we don't because of the scale of things. And this, I refer back to our previous episode, 1 or 2 episodes. This is what we're talking about, is we're talking about how we use these tools. What are we doing with these tools? How are we shaping the story? That is agency. And it's in the choices we make every day. So speaking of shaping the story, I have an example of good things happening with tech. Okay. Another example, which I found now I'm becoming more aware of them. So I'm seeing these examples and I want to share it.
Which is one way to shape the story, actually. Yes.
Exactly.
Being more aware of what's happening.
Exactly. It's much easier to see if you're aware of it. So we will probably come back to this frequently.
Hopefully.
So I heard about this story on the Huberman Lab podcast. So it's about, the episode was about a neuroscientist, was an interview with a neuroscientist, Dr. Edward Chang from the University of California. And he specializes in studying how the brain functions, particularly in terms of speech. A completely fascinating podcast. The link will be in the show notes. I highly recommend to anybody who wants to put the time in to go and listen to that. And he's using technology, including AI, to help patients who have injuries that prevent them from communicating effectively. So imagine how useful that can be. And so particularly, some of his work has been with people who have that absolutely horrifying syndrome called locked-in syndrome, which is like complete and total paralysis, and who keep thinking like perfectly clear-minded inside, okay? So what he's done with at least one patient, I don't know if more, is that he managed to implant a sort of neuroprosthesis, so sensors inside the brain, in the speech part of the brain, and to connect it to a computer via, a port in the scalp. So like having a USB port in your scalp. That's kind of cool. It's kind of freaky, but kind of cool. And over time, with, computer learning, the computer learned to recognize 50 different words. So the brain wave patterns for 50 different words. And that was enough to make something akin to an autocorrection system, like on your phone. I know we're always bitching about it, but it's extraordinary technology, right? And this allowed that patient to express himself in full sentences. This is just extraordinary, okay? So 50 words doesn't sound like a lot, just so that you know that the average person has a working everyday vocabulary of about 120 words. Or 120, 150, something like that. So it's not that much more, okay? Anyway, amazing story. Amazing stuff is being done.
Yeah, and 50 words is not that far off. And so if it's just like the beginning, the starting point, to give a comparison, I do remember testing voice dictation software, voice recognition, like 25 years ago. And I had to train it for like an hour before the computer could, first of all, turn the data for a whole night. And then being able to listen to my voice and recognize maybe 85 to 90% of my
another
words.
Example of what's improved in our lifetime.
Exactly, because nowadays you don't even think about it. You talk to your computer, your smartphone, whatever. And the latest AI models of voice recognition are just amazingly accurate. And we use them all the time, all day, with the podcast transcription and what have you. So, 50 words today from this very new technology, that's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. And let's continue on that trend. And I guess we'll finish on this. So remember, we mentioned at the beginning how it had been difficult to find positive examples of how tech can actually help, right? Well, to continue, here's another good one, thanks to Matt Farrell and on his YouTube channel called Undecided. There's some caveats, but still. This video in particular, it's called The Surprising Ways AI is Actually Helping. And here's the pitch, and that's what he says at the beginning. You know that stretch where you hit every green light perfectly? Well, that might not be luck anymore. There's an AI system that watches every car, bike, and pedestrian approaching an intersection in real time and lines up the lights so you can cruise right through.
That's incredible. I didn't know that.
But so, of course, there's a catch. So for this to work, the city has to see you. There are cameras, radar, the phone in your pocket is followed, the car in the driveway. So there's some creepy factors in there.
Yeah. What are the trade-offs?
What are the trade-offs? But what do we actually get back? And, there's a way for all of this to do this without cameras watching every move. So he describes and details everything. Once again, it's another worth watching video. I guess this episode of ours is full of things to watch and listen to after us.
Right, after us. Absolutely. Well, so to wrap it up, there's a lot of good. There are trade-offs. How can we have more agency in our choices? How can we just be more aware of what's going on and maybe see the good and overcome some of our negativity bias? And there's a lot in this episode. So let's wrap it up there. This has been episode 36. Thank you all for joining us. Please do visit the humanpulsepodcast.com. So humanpulsepodcast.com for links and past episodes.
And thank you for subscribing and reviewing wherever you listen to your podcasts. It helps other people find us. You can also share it with one person around you.
See you in more or less 2 weeks.
Bye, everyone.